Comeback Kid Jupiter is challenging old man time to square the circle. We got some really interesting energy that's coming in over these next 72 hours. It's an intense energy, it's a volatile energy, and anything can happen. But we definitely have something that is on the table that we need to take a look at here. And we're going to bring it in tonight while we look at the next 3 days, because that gives us enough to handle over the next 3 days. We are looking at the Jupiter square Saturn, Mars square Uranus transit we got going down here, where there's anything that could happen. There's a lot of unpredictability in the mix. There's a lot of volatility in the mix. There's amplified energy with Jupiter there. And even as there is this push for advancement, striving for more, for a different way forward, or just to have one's desires met, there's the clamp down of limitations on our sphere of influence, limitations on where we can experience that expansion or growth at this time. And it's all being imposed by our current responsibilities and the basic infrastructure of life itself and what's needing to be transformed so there can be another way forward. But before that can happen, there needs to be a complete reimagining of these structures that are in place, not only in our personal lives, but also on a much wider scale here. There's also in the mix, just as we feel like we're really getting poked and prodded and sort of being pushed to take some kind of action or bend to another's will, there's the need to kind of like sit down, contemplate one's navel for a minute, really taking the path of personal accountability. And in some cases, course correction, where we are moving out of line in such a way that it's out of line with our basic core values here. And I don't mean core values that are determined by society. I mean your personal core values, what feels right within your soul. But within all this, with Jupiter in the mix, and also with Uranus, which can sometimes create the opportunity to really pull off the impossible, there is the opportunity to create a sustainable path out of the dark wood. But we do have to think about sustainability here. If you want to know how intense that energy is, or just the quality of that frequency and the different aspects it can bring, such as zero patience, doing the most, overreaching, pushing something too far, not reading the room and overextending your reach, only to suffer some form of humiliation. And with this kind of climate, it could go down publicly. Challenges that are coming at you out of left field, but challenges that at the same time, if you have the right mindset, give you the opportunity to come up with a really creative solution or an innovative way to navigate around a particular problem that you never would have come up with before if you didn't have this hurdle to face on your path. Above all, there's a need to change, to understand that things are changing. Nothing is going to stay the same. So it's time to really give up the desire for that comfort. It's just not going to be possible as things continue to roll out here. We're in upheaval, but the upheaval can be like a great wave that's swelling, and we can just sort of like ride that quest. We can learn how to surf that crest. Yeah, ride that quest, you know. I mean, it's a wave of change. It's also a wake-up call, you know. It may seem like a tsunami. It does sort of change the landscape. It wipes out a lot of what's been familiar to us. But we can ride it. We can ride it a long way, and we can ride it in a way that endures and can sort of face the need to have that endurance as we head into the future, because none of this is going to be settled overnight. But if you want to know, how fierce it can get, how volatile it can get, all you have to do is look at the way Iran is clapped back at Israel. Okay, that is the energy. It can bring about that sort of energy of two opposing forces facing off, having a battle of wills, in some cases, having a battle of wits, each trying to get their own needs met without really thinking about the bigger picture. It's very hot climate. Cardinal square in the mix, cardinal signs, you're really going to be feeling this energy pretty intensely. So Aries, who's really the star of the show right now, I have to say, because Aries has Neptune and Saturn in that first house where there's going to be all this squaring off action going down. And Mars, Aries ruler, is squared to Uranus, that energy that is the wild card element. Anything can happen, anything goes. So cardinal signs, make sure that you're getting out there, Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, get out there and touch some grass. Try to do what you can to lighten up the mood a little bit. Take a break. Take a break if you need to. Understand that your patience may be worn a little thin. So if you know that there's difficult people trying to get in touch with you, or if you know that somebody wants to just sort of poke at you and stir the pot, you know what to do, just kind of make yourself scarce. Allow this energy to blow over. Use it as a time to find your center and like I said, just, contemplate things. Contemplate the best way to move forward, considering the present limitations, all right? But everybody's certainly going to be feeling this. And while Jupiter did move into Cancer on the 9th, and this does bring about that exaltation of the Venusian energy, and in general will bring a lot of positive influences down the road. We first have to get through this tricky territory before we get to the good stuff. Okay, so it's sort of like having your finals before you get off for summer break. It is that kind of energy. Okay, so I thought we would just sort of like dive into this influence here. I also am bringing to mind an old episode of South Park where, Cartman buys the amusement park, but initially only lets him enjoy the ride, Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of that kind of like Cartman energy out there. And a lot of people also feeling kind of frustrated, going, wait a minute, I was told there was going to be punch pie, man. Where's the punch pie? Right. So where you can, I know it can be rough sometimes, especially when there's a lot rocking and rolling out there, but try to find the humor in things. I mean, even Cartman had to give way. Eventually, he had to give way. There had to be some give, and that's sort of this energy. There's got to be a little give and take, but there's going to be people that are going to be hell-bent on having things all their way. So since it is such a big energy and there is a lot of layers to it, and on top of that, it can be a little complex and it can play out in different arenas, I thought we'd sort of look at this energy from 3 different angles. So first, I'm going to look at it from a more mundane angle here with the glow in the dark tarot, to bring about some illumination as far as what kind of themes you might see emerging over the next 72 hours, what kind of people you might be dealing with, how you might be feeling, what kind of situations could come your way in your personal life. And then from there, we'll go on a more occult, secret society level with the angels and imps deck to see what's playing out on a larger scale and how that's going to influence all of us. And then finally, we'll dip into that sea of absurdity with our arcane BS, and we'll get really weird with it and psychedelic with it, and we'll create a whole different kind of perspective, looking through a whole separate reality tunnel there, and see what we can see in terms of how we can work with this energy, because it may be chaotic, but chaos is creative. So if you have enough imagination, you can work with the very worst of energy and make something beautiful come out of it. So let's check it out. Bottom of the deck. Ooh, no hope, no future. We're heading straight to destruction. I mean, this is the collective consciousness right now. This is the rough side of Pluto in Aquarius. This is the rough side when it feels really regressive before it feels revolutionary. This is when it feels like all hope is lost, the opportunity is being spilled out, and that there is no reason to even contemplate anything anymore because people are more focused on the practical concerns. They're concerned about really real stuff, at this time. They're not really thinking about idealism, that's not factoring into the equation. There's more of a stoic perspective. And also some people may be in that sort of Aquarian energy, especially those of you who have either Leo rising or strong Aquarius placements in your chart. You may be feeling like a need to just like hit the eject button. You may be wanting to completely detach. And in terms where you're dealing with difficult situations in regard to your relationships, your loved ones, where you feel like you're really at odds with another who wants everything to be their way and they can't see where your needs have to be met as well, where there has to be some kind of ability to make some concessions, come to some kind of compromise, some kind of solution that can at least provide a little negotiating room for everybody to get what they need out of a situation. You may be feeling like it's pointless. You may be feeling like you're dealing with somebody who's extremely self-absorbed, that all they care about is their own reflection, how they see a situation, what's right for them. You may feel like you're dealing with somebody that is really vain, and they think everything's about them. They can't even see you in the reflection of the situation that you're mutually invested in here. And certainly this can even come down to frisson that's created because people have opposing political views or different stances on really heated topics right now, right? So this can come up for sure. And I do see that a lot of people may want to just sort of totally disconnect, wander off into the alfalfa, get lost for a while, and just sort of go into la la land. I don't want to look at what is being revealed here. I thought I wanted to pull back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz, but now when I'm seeing the machinations that have been going on behind the scene, I don't think I'm prepared to really understand the gravity of that and the way it's influencing my sphere. Because a lot of times when we look at bigger things that are rolling out on the global stage, we can distance ourselves from that. And we can go, oh, well, that doesn't really impact me because that's going on in that part of the world. But the reality is right now, it's all going down right where we're at. And we're all being affected by it. And that is that tsunami energy. It's this giant wave of change. And it can wipe things out if we don't really learn how to adapt to this kind of flow that's so big and that carries so much force. And how do we harmonize with that energy without it taking us to a place of chaos within ourselves? That requires a lot of mastery. It requires the ability to really go into that clear center, that eye of the storm. Right? So we can recapture a sense of hope, or at least a sense of purpose. Sometimes you have to find a sense of purpose before you can really tap into hope, You have to find something that you feel is worth investing in, taking a stand for, not necessarily giving up just because the going gets tough. And the more people that sort of like throw in the towel at this time, the more danger we have of really wasting the dawn. That's the reality. And those tests are going down in our little microspheres and our little bubbles in our personal reality. But make no mistake about it, we're all in that like collective soul soup that is being sloshed around in that cauldron of rebirth that Kieran is stirring there. Okay, we're all going through quite a transformational process right now. So let's see some more about this. Okay, so we feel like all hope is lost. It's all going to hell in a handbasket. What's the point? Nobody cares about what I feel or what I want anyway. And see, but this isn't true. I mean, we're dealing with some tricky energy, certainly. We do have some trickster energy that is at the helm. But there's also a secret knowledge, secret awareness that is starting to rise up within us. There's the riddle of our life that is asking to be solved, and it's asking to be solved through what we align with, through our decisive actions and the ways that we can cut ourselves off by staying in too fixed of a position that keeps us entrenched in a cycle where we do feel so impacted by this sense of limitation. And another way that we can kind of create a momentum and get the cogs moving is to first achieve that through contemplating things from a different angle. It allows our minds to sort of be cleansed of all the old BS. We can get a little bit different of a perspective once there's been the shock of the awareness of really where things are at and how that influences us. And also, you know, just what's going on in the world as a whole and what that means for the future. Okay, so there is something here about starting there. How can you expand your mind? How can you expand your consciousness during these times when it can be so easy to get into a place of tunnel vision? And I don't mean reality tunnel that's like the most amazing, optimistic, promising, productive reality tunnel you could be looking through either. I mean, looking through a reality tunnel that has become so myopic, it doesn't really give any view other than what seems like a period at the end of the story. Like this is where it comes to a close. There can be sort of a fatalistic, and I want to say fatalistic ending coming through. That's not what I wanted to say, but some of you may really be looking at things from that angle. You may have a very fatalistic view, like what is the point anyway? And that might have some people sort of throwing caution to the wind in such a way that really has a detrimental effect. It closes off a bridge that needs to be crossed down the road. A lot of you are having challenges in your relationships without really understanding that this is sort of like that moment where things reach such a pressurized point that it's like a cloud burst. You know what I mean? And there's like this big release that comes that does provide a way to rise above the challenges and find a sense of healing, figure out a way through, to come to some kind of agreement in a very tricky situation. But it does require that we can't be too sort of fixed in our own account of events, and where we do feel fixed in regard to our own account of events and the way we've been affected or impacted, and what role others played in that story that we keep telling ourselves everyone else you're dealing with is in that same position too. So the views can become extremely entrenched. And really the only thing that can change that holding pattern It's not so much about the other. It's about personal accountability, which requires either understanding that there has to be compromise if you're wanting to continue to work things out with a certain someone, having the willingness to open up your perspective to where they may be at, or to say, okay, I'm going to let that go and I'm going to go my own way and I'll take the L, I'll take the loss, or I need to take a time out from this because I can recognize I'm not ready to sort of sit at that bargaining table. And I feel like there's some things I can't bargain on anymore because I feel like I already compromised too much. I already gave too many concessions. So these are like kind of themes that are playing out. But with Jupiter in Cancer, once these squares are out of the way, we're going to have another square come in. It's going to be Jupiter square Neptune, and that's going to be coming in next Wednesday. Okay, so after my break this weekend, when I come back on Wednesday, we'll dive into the next 72 hours around that. Let's focus on the matter at hand. So I feel like this is enough to contend with right now. We also have to look at the way a lot of people are feeling pressurized. They want the people they're trying to come to some kind of agreement with to make up their mind already, like figure it out. Like time's being wasted here, time's ticking, and there's only so much time left. So there's also the pressure of that, like the march of time, how long something's been left hanging, and recognizing that everything is shifting at such a rapid pace that we don't have time to sort of like waste on non-essentials anymore. It's like, can we get to the heart of the matter? Can we cut to the chase? Okay. Ultimately, we're trying to find a way to transform what overpowered us in the past, what limited us in the past, what restricted us in the past, what we failed to rise above in the past and let it warlord over us. We're really seeking the way to transform that energy. How can we overcome what was a past limitation or something that we felt completely rolled over in the past? There's also, how can I put this? The desire to flex one's muscle to show like, I'm not who I was, And there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of pushback coming from people who have grown through their experiences. They face challenges and they're truly showing up in a new way, but the people that they're dealing with in their personal lives don't recognize this person. And because they don't recognize this person, because there's this, desire to no longer play the old role because it's inauthentic, this can also create problems and misunderstandings and an inability to bridge the gap. So I see a lot of challenges coming forward in relationships, important relationships that have had a lot of history to them and a lot of points where there couldn't be a meeting ground, just really like a butting of heads, a clashing of wills. And this is a bridge we have to cross if we ever hope to get to the other side and cast off this heavy energy and cast off the veils of illusion, to really see things as they are, to really let people be who they are, to let people be in their true soul's essence, let them also hold power, let them feel empowered, and to think of true success, like a successful outcome doesn't look like just one person holding the power. It really does look like a sharing power. This is where the growth is. And understanding that we're trying to navigate this, and it isn't easy because it's a journey of wisdom with the Hermit. And even if you're having battles of will or clashes with people you really love, care about, that you want to join you on the road forward into this next chapter, you're still alone. Like at the end of the day, you're still alone. You're still on your own spiritual journey here. You're on your own quest for knowledge, for wisdom. You're in your own growth process here. And everybody, as much as we can be in the company of others, can relate to the feeling of being in a room full of people and still feeling very much alone, because there's a lot of really deep personal stuff that you're navigating here, and you're really trying to connect with a meaningful path forward, a path that feels like it is in alignment with your heart. And this has everything to do with all the soul searching you've been doing, everything you've been integrating. We also have to remember it is the energy of the South Node right now. This is the Virgo South Node energy, where it's about seeking that wisdom, that light of understanding that provides illumination for the path ahead, that really is in alignment with our heart. Because the reality is most people thought that they were moving forward in alignment with their hearts in the past, but they hadn't even really made contact with their heart, because their heart was actually blocked by so many layers of old hurts and old stories and old projections and old trauma and old filters, and too many layers of guarding and protection, and all of that needed to be dissolved through all the territory we moved through with Pluto and Capricorn last year. We needed to go through some mean and heavy territory so we would be forced to acknowledge it. And first, that comes through a lot of disillusionment and a lot of pain and a lot of anger. But when you look at all that, when you look at the anger and you look at the frustration and the desire to lash out and all that pressurized fire that's been held back by a wall of cold for too long, when you get down to the bottom of it, it's because there's this hurt there. And that's what everybody's trying to figure out, How do we let the light back in this wound? How do we heal here? How do we come back together here? But see, there's this beautiful thing that's in motion right now. And it looks very ugly on the surface, but appearances are deceiving. And what the beauty is that we're being given an opportunity right now to truly discover the place where the light does get through the wound, right? In our most important relationships. And of course, that always begins with the relationship we have with ourselves. There's a lot of anxiety right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of stress. There's probably many of you that are having a hard time, getting a good night's sleep, or you might just feel like you got too many things on your mind, too many what ifs. And if you're experiencing that, I really do encourage you to just get a little space. Okay, get a little space from the headlines for a minute. You don't have to take it all in all the time. Give yourself a little opportunity to integrate what you're feeling here and connect with your heart. Give yourself that space to unplug for a minute, to really lean into what's coming up for you. This all turned over like so. Yes, see, got the Hangman here, to the Ace of Swords, to the Ace of Pentacles, to the Magician, to the Six of Cups. I love this energy. To the Queen of Swords. Look at this. Very powerful energy here. Okay? This is about giving yourself that space to get a different view, to look at something from another angle, and to maybe change your view entirely. And how a situation that may seem upside down is actually right side up, because of what it's allowing to come through you that couldn't come through any other way. And what is that? That is wanting to come through. It's some kind of truth here that wants to come through that allows you to gain the ability to recognize, I don't need to hang out here. I don't need to be stuck here. I've had a certain illumination because I finally was able to see a truth that lets me know what action needs to be taken. Arriving at your core truth immediately provides the way through in a space where you felt held against your will. Then the will becomes aligned with integrity. And once there's that kind of clarity, then one knows how to use their words to speak things into existence that change the entire trajectory of the path ahead. It also instantly provides the answers that one was seeking. The answers are not found without, the answers are found within. Whatever comes in here creates an opportunity where you finally understand what is the direction that's worth investing in. I see you investing in this direction. You're going to use your fire to bring it forward. You're going to take an action because an opportunity is being presented here to you. Stay alert to this over the next 72 hours. This is what's up ahead. It's an opportunity to recover something that had been lost, to the more visionary aspect of you that you lost back in childhood, something that is being retrieved from that time in your life. A lot of us really have lost our sense of wonder. We've lost our sense of imagination. We've lost our sense of hopefulness, our optimism, and our ability to be very present and to approach things with fresh eyes. So a lot of times, growing up, growing beyond, growing through challenging circumstances requires a certain level of innocence. It's a bit of returning to a beginner's mind to get a perspective that can actually allow one to tap into a wisdom that can see an opportunity where others may feel there is none. There's an opportunity presented here, and it is tangible. It's a direction that can be invested in. And I do feel like you will take action to invest in this. And I feel it's the revitalization of a course that you had abandoned in the past, because in some way you didn't understand the truth of what the experience itself would provide. This could be a path that is very challenging. This could be a path that is going to make you bump up against the places in yourself where you are not willing to compromise, where you are absolutely stubborn. You may be afraid to go poking around in this territory. And yet this is the path that you're being asked to go down now. 33:33 on the clock. I do feel that there's something approaching you. There could be someone approaching you. Whatever this is, it brings both communication and an opportunity to start again on a new foot and transform a situation in terms of sharing power. This is pulling off the impossible in terms of a particular connection that's been caught at the crossroads for a long time. And you know me, I don't usually do love reads on this channel. I don't. But with Jupiter moving in to Cancer, and that being the house of its exaltation, this is going to be a time that's going to start ripening, especially as we get more into Leo season, as we head further into summer, where soulmates are sort of finding the place where they belong, you know? They're meeting up in the right time, the right place. And a lot of times, there's a deep healing that's happening there that brings about a sense of reunion, even if this is somebody that you've never encountered before. And please remember, soulmates isn't always romantic, but there is a lot of this. I have to be honest, there has been a lot of romantic energy that's been coming through since Jupiter moved into Cancer. And we'll get into more of that down the road. I'll bring in some readings around that. But let's just stay focused here right now. Some of you will be healing a situation that you faced with a former partner or a former friend or a former loved one that you now have distance from, or it's not time to bridge that divide. You may be getting a different perspective of that situation through a new person who's coming on your path, that you're investing in an opportunity in. And there's something about that growth process with this individual that helps you resolve an issue from your past. A lot of times people don't think about that, the way these lessons that we get through our relationships. It's an energy signature, and the energy sort of needs to be refined over time and brought into more of a state of exaltation. And it doesn't always have to express itself through the same person. You can experience the same kind of lesson coming from a different person, and maybe a person who has also gone through a similar growth process as you. So there can be a different kind of mirroring of energy within the context of that relationship that helps you overcome a past hurdle that you couldn't in a previous relationship. And yet there is this sense that even in those cases, there could be something that miraculously turns back time down the road, and a bridge that, you know, at one point you may have been more subject to kind of burn. You were able to temper that sort of impulsivity, and as a result, you're going to be glad after some of the experiences you have here that are going to be rolling out with agents of change. That's kind of how it's coming through. Agents of change that are going to show up on your path, that are going to sort of help you get in touch with your truth. Maybe people have a different way of communicating that requires you to show up in a different sort of way. There's like growth in the communication coming through. There's something very worthwhile in investing in this communication and opening up to this opportunity. There's transformation, there's movement forward. What's opening up here? It's something that's part of a much bigger picture. It's just the beginning of a journey that's going to play out over a full turning of the wheel. So we have to remember, with Jupiter in Cancer, that's an energy that's going to be with us for about a year. Okay, so right now we're just at the point where, okay, we've all been dealt our hand of fate by the norms, right? We've all gotten our allotted thread of fate there, and it's sort of up to us how we weave our destiny out of that. And so this is what's showing up on the scene, these opportunities to look at the length of this, you know, thread of fate that we've been dealt, and consider, how can I weave this together in a new way that turns the wheel of fortune in my favor and brings the dawn of a new day into view, right? But it's a wisdom path. And I do see a lot of joining of forces. Some of you with reunion with people that you dealt with in the past, and entering into maybe association, negotiation, conversation with people that you weren't ready to at one point. It looks like there's been like some kind of fear or anxiety playing out in this regard on some level. Characters that we have on the board in relation to this, we have both Pisces and Virgo really holding down that energy of Virgo in the South Node, Pisces in the North Node. So, of course, this is a collective energy, these fears, these anxieties of what's to come, and being in this place where we feel like we're on pause, and yet there's a lot of weight in the atmosphere as we're sitting in this place of, okay, what next, right? We got Leo energy here, and we also have Sagittarian energy. We got all the fixed signs. We have Taurus, we have Aquarius, we have Scorpio, and of course, a double emphasis on Leo there. We also have Gemini, the communication really coming forward as such a revolutionized platform for change in terms of just how we can get a message across, how we can spread the news, how we can show up, how we can exercise our personal power to create transformation. So do look for this to continue to experience not only clampdowns in terms of trying to block expression, put on different sensors, but also the ways to overcome these hurdles, overcome these challenges, spread the word, get creative with it, bring people together, take back the airwaves. This is a message coming through, take back the airwaves. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that. I really do feel there's going to be a lot more like independent radio stations, independent platforms, kind of like cropping up, where people can kind of take back their sphere of influence in this sector as far as on the World Wide Web. I do feel like a lot of people are looking at that. Also, getting above this sort of real superficial tribe focus of social media and the competition for who has the most toys, who has the most clout, the whole like, you know, celebrity status, all this nonsense. Like people are so burnt out on it, man. People are so over it. People just want what's real. They're sick of the image. They're sick of the pretense. And so I think we're going to see just more of that rolling out, like people really wanting to get real, wanting to get down to the nuts and bolts of everything. Stop being so careful about the way we communicate. Do look for, the old perfectly PC template to give way as people start to talk about a lot more uncomfortable things, and that there will be no way to work around it because it's in our face. And there's no way it's going to be able to be hidden or sort of suppressed anymore, because it's going to be there. It's going to be there on Front Street. The reality that things are changing, the reality that nothing is staying the same, the reality that what we have before us is a brand new way to move ahead in our lives, in our personal lives, with our loved ones, how we're investing our time, our energy, but also as a global society. Like everything's shifting. Everything's shifting. And there also really is this like need. It keeps coming through. This message has been coming through in my reads, like these exact card combinations where it's like, we are not allowed to sort of like hang out here and not take accountability. And to the extent that you feel like you can sit this one out and not be part of taking some kind of action in alignment with your truth, to be part of this wave of change, is to allow yourself to succumb to being wiped out. I mean, that is the energy. There's a need to align with our truth and cut ourselves down, especially where we've had illumination of what the truth is, but it's a very uncomfortable truth and we're afraid. We're afraid to face it. We're afraid to speak it. We're afraid to act on it. And yet it's like, no, this is what needs to be done. This is where we need to make the investment. It's so essential right now. It's so essential to recover what was lost, to recover those things that we're nostalgic for simpler times, right? For those times when handshake actually meant something, when somebody's word counted for something. It's that energy, wanting to get back to a time when there weren't the filters and there wasn't all of these sort of limitations that have become a bit of a mental prison for us by having to always navigate, around the discomfort and instead facing it squarely in the areas where we're feeling most challenged. That's what's going to help us find the way through. All right, let me do a cut the deck here. And even though that was like looking at more of the mundane, it doesn't feel like such a small energy right now. Even the mundane, the sort of ground zero of the mundane reality is going through a state of ascension. It almost feels like, yeah, this is it, that feeling of being hemmed in, that feeling of having no ability to take any kind of action, not to stand for anything, but instead stay within the safety zone of our own sense of helplessness or victimization or lack of power to create any kind of momentum within our own lives, which is just complete nonsense, because often that momentum, all it requires is just a change of thought, a change of perspective, the exploration of a new idea, opening oneself to possibility of perhaps a different way of looking at something, okay? And being willing to learn with the Page of Pentacles. And this is the cycle that we're in, and this is what we're getting right now. Do you see? You're getting the opportunity through some experience that's coming toward you at this time. It's likely coming through another individual or individuals, people who are crossing your path, and it likely has something to do with communication and getting an opportunity to exercise the wisdom that you learned in the old cycles, so you can really elevate that energy and move on up into your North Node. But it's up to you. Are you going to take this opportunity to learn? And I think a lot of you will. I think a lot of you are willing to learn. You want to find the way through a particular conflict. You want to find a way where it doesn't have to be so much competition, where there can be more of an understanding that there's got to be a way that everybody can benefit here in this situation we're facing. There's got to be a way that we can balance this out and that we can find a new way forward where we're being led by our heart instead of our desire to hold all the power in a situation or get our way in a situation. And this is in a situation where it's deeply entrenched, right? So there's difficulty when you're bucking tradition, even if it's beneficial. But I do feel like there is a path of heart available here. There is a way through. And there's an invitation coming your way to enter into this kind of negotiation. And it's something that can bring celebration and healing if you're willing to be open to the experience, okay? So this is what I see coming in on more of the mundane level. Let me just kind of like move this over to the side. Now let's look at it for the wizards out there. Let's look at it from the angle of more of an occult focus or secret society focus. Some would even say potentially a conspiracy theory focus. I'm going to pull out the angels and imps to just see how these different polarities are playing out right now, because what you're going to be experiencing is that sort of imbalance in power structure that we have at this time, where oppressive forces currently do have more of a stronghold. And we can't negate the shadow. The shadow does play a role. And there does need to be a balance of shadow and light. And then we have the star on the bottom of the deck there. If we are to achieve equilibrium, we have to remember that even within nature, there is a balance, right? There's night, there's day. There's times of fallow, and then there's times of growth. There's times when we need to rest, and there's times when we need to be active. So this dichotomous nature is something that's inherent in material reality. We can't negate this. But there is currently more of the shadow aspect in a leadership position. And now is a time where we're starting to experience more people actively bringing their creative life force energy forward to shine a light on what's been hidden for the sake of exposure, for the sake of truth telling, to also be brave enough to step into the light and to play an active role in creating change in the world, and to look at new ways of moving forward that don't just serve one, but serve the many. Okay, so this is going to bring about clashing. And there's no way around that, really, as much as we would like there to be. And there's also that sense of uneasiness, because you know that when we see what we see on the news and what's released to us, we know that we're seeing like just the tiniest aspect of that picture. We're seeing what those who do hold the majority of the power want us to see. And so there's that other aspect for people that are tapping in and that are self-aware and also have environmental awareness and are paying attention, where there's understanding that there's a need to bring forward our energy in such a way where we can start to bring a bit more of the progressive focus forward, without putting ourselves in a position where we impede the movement before it ever gets started by trying to beat, this is how it's coming through, by trying to beat the enemy at their own game. It's one of those things, it's like you fight fire with fire, it's just going to be all out decimation. You got to move smarter than that. It's not the way through. Being combative is not the way through. Right? And yes, you know, those of you who are tapped in, like, you know that there's a lot going on right now, and it's pretty heavy. Some of you may be having difficulty with that because it's like you're sort of watching the rhetoric and you know, seeing the divisory agenda play out, and the way everybody is at odds with each other, and everything is only continuing to get more polarized. Just as we were starting to come into more of a collective-oriented consciousness, have you noticed? It's been starting to shift, swing back the other way as the powers that be are sort of like clamping down here. Okay, so that is sort of like the hidden agenda, the secret society stuff. What's going on behind that curtain? What are the purveyors of doom doing to sway the collective consciousness so they can get it in line? And what are the means they're going to employ in order to achieve their ends? We're already seeing a little bit of that rolling out. So see, this is a good time to sort of contemplate these things. Sun Tzu, The Art of War. You know, it's about thinking with a little bit more of a strategic leaning that puts it in the category of foresight as opposed to hindsight. Hindsight's not going to serve us at this point because honestly, we've never been at the time that we are at right now in history. We've had things that have been similar, that have carried a similar tone, but this is really uncharted territory. And the things we're going to be forced to reckon with at this time are pretty intense. So it does require a little bit of consideration here. And being aware of moving in such a way that, yes, it starts to move us into expansion. It starts to transform the scope of reality and the way things roll out. It helps us to gain some momentum, but it doesn't shoot us in the foot precipitously because we just sort of rush in without a game plan. Without a game plan for how it affects this change. Bottom of the deck, see, 7 of Wands. There's a lot of aggression out there right now. There are a lot of lives that are being lost on the battlefield. And that's something that has been going on for a long time. But because a lot of us haven't had that experience on our own soil, we've been able to distance ourselves from that. We're not going to be able to do that anymore because there's a lot that's brewing on our home turf, no matter where we are in the world. And this is something that affects all of us. And it is one of those things like, you know, just like Dylan said, you know, the answer's blowing in the wind. And you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. The signs are evident. The signs of the times are here. And this is the time that if we allow ourselves to be programmed by the propaganda that's rolling out here, soon your friends can very, very well become your enemies. And you can find yourself polarized with people that you're really meant to join forces with, okay? And this is a quality that's very undermining, and it's something that's seeded online. It's something seeded on social media. It's something that's programmed into the algorithm, and people get caught up in it. And they don't know how it happens down the road when they recognize that all of a sudden they really feel like they see things very differently than people they've known their whole lives, you know. But that's because it's an insidious influence. It's something that comes in like a thief to capture our attention. All this information that we have such easy access to. But you always have to remember this when you're taking in information. And this is why I feel like there's going to be a lot more independent, sort of like news outlets, you could say, like ways of spreading the news, ways of spreading the word, ways of sharing messages, platforms that are going to start to crop up. I actually feel like a lot of the grassroots movement is going to come in the form of online activity and the way that's going to be transformed. And sure, it'll start small, but over time, that's something that will continue to propagate. And as it continues to propagate, it will start to turn that tide as far as how it affects the collective consciousness. But what's happened is people haven't really recognized the way this influence has come in and has driven a wedge between us to purposely program us to be in such a polarized state. And wherever we have that polarization and such a stark dividing line of contrast and compare, that's when we're really weakened. All right. So I think we're starting to wake up to this reality, and we're starting to see the cost and the way that it's separating us from those that we really should be joining forces with to strengthen our position too, you know. I think a lot of this will also be happening politically too. We're probably going to be seeing this, like different parties on that worldwide stage that used to be at odds with each other are going to be extending olive branches and sort of cutting deals with each other. But even as we're seeing that, there's so many movable parts behind the scenes, right? There's a lot operating currently beneath the surface. Even as a lot of truths will come up and out. So it's interesting here. Let's see if there's anything else that wants to come in around this. So the people that are in a position of power right now, and when I say that, I mean like the 1%, they're going to clamp down harder. They're going to clamp down harder. Even as we start to align with something that really does feel resonant with a sense of purpose in our hearts, even as we start to find ways to come together for redemption that can allow us to overcome these challenges that we face, we're going to experience a greater clamping down and more of this sort of like smoke and mirrors to confuse, to put us in a state of illusion, to make us feel pressurized with the time that we have in such limited supply, because we're always in a state of survival. You ever think about that when you feel like you don't have any time to contemplate the deeper undercurrents of what's rolling out, the way that that can be used to exert power, to put one in a state of constant survival, can make one dull in their senses where they don't question things more deeply because they're just trying to make certain they get their basic needs met. But I do feel like where there has been this sort of manipulation going on, time's about to run out on that. There is something that is going to be balanced out here. And it may not seem like that, because it is going to have to get pretty intense before it turns around. But I do feel like time will be up on this collective illusion, like time's running out. And it's also one of those things, it's like the powers that be can only sort of hold that illusion in place for so long too. But you see, there's justice coming through. There is a new balance that is going to be established here. It's going to take time for it to roll out, but the truth is going to be known here. And there is fruition through us coming together, joining forces. This is how we move forward. This is how we find the way through. And this is also us, again, I'm really feeling it's coming through in the realm of the way we can network through communication and start taking charge of sort of the narrative that's put out there, instead of relying on, certain, let's just put it bluntly the way it is, certain corporations that are invested in you buying into a certain story because for them it equals profits. There's a necessity for us to kind of take back the reins of that and also go searching for the answers ourselves. Don't take things necessarily at face value. It's wise to question things. It's wise to look a little deeper. And you think about that when you think about, conspiracy theorists. Well, what's funny about conspiracy theorists is that a lot of times what people equate as quack logic and being out of touch with reality, wearing a tinfoil hat and not having any sense is actually quite precognitive if you think about it, because 9 times out of 10 down the road, what the conspiracy theorists were being mocked for turns out to have more basis in the truth than the programming that was sort of being parroted by everybody who took it in and bought the spiel they were sold. And so there is really something about this coming through, about the way to really shift things, and not just shift things, to manifest a different future for us here and come back into a true balance of power. It really does involve something about this, like taking over the airwaves, seeking out the truth for ourselves, and bringing different perspectives forward, sharing those perspectives and creating opportunities for people of diverging views to have respectful meeting grounds, to talk things out rather than what we usually see online. And that's why I feel like the whole social media format needs to be completely switched up. Completely switched up. And there is a way that you can still have like a sense of grounding or a sense of structure that's able to hold the space for that kind of dynamic communication and problem solving, where the focus of these communities can be more solution oriented. There's a way for there to be a harmonization of those seemingly polarized energies. Even within communities like that, you need to have people that can anchor the energy down. You need to have people who can lead. You need to have people who can lead and who can preserve the integrity of a space. And I do feel like there's a lot of leaders waking up right now. Leaders in the common man, leaders of the charge. Leaders who want to forge a new way forward, and they're ready to do this work. So if you feel called to that, if you feel called to leadership within your own community, to create something, to create a forum where people can meet and share views and come up with solutions and create understanding and bring the people together, find connecting points instead of always fighting with each other. I mean, this really is the way through. And with Queen of Wands here, we do have to understand that this is what allows us to kind of take back that power that we've given away and to affect a positive change in our lives. And this is what gets us out of our heads. Because when we're in that space of that like 8 of Swords, 9 of Swords energy where we feel trapped, the reason why we feel that way is because we're not taking any kind of action. So the energy's held within and it turns on itself. Next thing you know, you're worked up into a knot. So doing something, anything where you feel like at least, I'm putting my creative life force energy into the mix here, can create a certain momentum in your life. And it's also a contributing factor to the collective energy as a whole. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let me do a cover deck here, okay? So I do feel like the deeper intentions of this sort of like secret society stuff and what's going on behind the stage on the worldwide scene is something that's heavily cloaked at this time, but not for long. And if you're feeling that anxiety, if you're feeling the buzz of that energy, that's what you're tapping into. You can feel what's operating on the undercurrent. And just because you don't see it, you can't deny the presence of what's brewing here. Like, there's more to come here. There's a lot that's about to pop off. But if you're in that space where you're feeling this buildup of energy because you're taking so much of that on in the atmosphere, it's about switching up your focus, put your focus in a more constructive direction. Maybe start moving into action first in your own life. Like, how can you create a space where you feel more empowered in your current situation? Maybe by preparing for certain challenges to come that you're sensing are up ahead. Maybe by healing relationships where you are feeling like you can't get on the same page. This is really important. This is really important to start to put the energy into motion, to transform not only where you're at, but where you're at within your, immediate environment, and go from there. Go from there, but just get things moving and turn away from so much of the fear-based information that's coming through. Maybe put a limit on how much you take in, especially if it's putting you in that place where you feel like you're getting overwhelmed by it. Just know that what's happening now is necessary. It's sort of like a purging of all the corruption in the world. So initially, we're going to see how ugly it really is for a lot of people who have been checked out or have just sort of been buying into the false sense of comfort that they've been sold through the powers that be. It's going to be rough. But for those of you tinfoil hat wearers out there, you've been knowing this was coming for a long time. So I do feel like for a lot of people who, have been talking about these things for a long time, there's a little bit of indication there. And I'm seeing that come through too. Okay. So it's interesting because I don't see like a lot of normally, a lot of that stuff is more on the surface when we dive in and look at that, like secret society stuff. Normally it's really up front and center in the reads, but right now there's like a lot of suppression of that. So if you see what's going on right now, you see all that, just know like there's so much more. And that gives you an indication of what's brewing here. It's heavily cloaked right now. And with that, we got the Four of Wands. But we will know in time. Judgment will be sounded, and in time, we will have the answers to those things that we sense right now, but we don't have the proof of. In other words, the conspiracy theorists will be vindicated in the future. A lot of them will be. Because even though, other people may not be listening to them as they're trying to sound the call of change and let people know what's up, trying to provide some kind of intellectual lucidity here, trying to reveal things that are hidden, trying to help people understand what's really operating beneath the surface of all this kind of like wag the dog fanfare. The answers will come about things both earthly and divine. So there's a lot of new spiritual understanding and elevation of consciousness that's going to come through too. Even as some really rough stuff is going to have to be acknowledged here, I feel. And again, look, it keeps coming through. Page of Pentacles. This is just the beginning of the learning cycle. We are just starting to peel back the veil of illusion. And you already see the disruption and upheaval it is. It's just the beginning. There's so much more that's going to be revealed. There's so much more that's going to be uncovered here. And so the last thing that we need to do is be fighting with people online, over having opposing views and staying entrenched in those places of division. Because down the road, that division is what is going to feed into the agenda of those who want to hoard the power. We have to remember to find a way to tap into the places where we do connect, where we can find some level of understanding or agreement. And that is a way that we can build something new for our future. But it's a learning process. And we have to create the spaces for it, okay? Interesting. It's really wild how there doesn't want to be any sort of talk about what's hidden behind the scenes. But I mean, that doesn't surprise me. All right, let's check it out. We're going to dive into some arcane BS and just get some more details here. Bottom of the deck, yeah, we do have this random clip art sort of message here. And that also makes me think of all the AI we got going on now, all this copy paste kind of stuff. No more true independent creative thought. Everything is rehashed. Everything's regurgitated. Everything is done in such a way and presented in such a way that it keeps everything within the borders of what's acceptable, keeps us minding our P's and Q's, and meanwhile is starving us of the true nourishment that we need, the true knowledge that needs to awaken within us. All right, let's just kind of wrap this up here. Hope that this has given you like some insight into the energy that's rolling out here and how it may be influencing your personal life, your relationships, just where you're at internally, and maybe get you thinking a little bit differently about how you can bridge some of the gaps you're experiencing, where you're having a battle of wills with a person in your life, or where you're at odds with someone. Is there a way that, I can get out of the hot seat here and, get back into being in a position where I'm seated in my power? A lot of you may be having this recognition. You may recognize that you didn't have the proper understanding of something. There might be some kind of information coming in, some kind of news coming in that makes you feel like, oh man, I'm so effing effed. Like that wasn't the right call back there. I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I wouldn't have done that. See, but there's something you're learning here. And it's something, unfortunately, that at this point you are learning in hindsight, but it allows you to sort of rewrite your history too. It allows you to understand your personal history in a different way. And this is what puts you back into that position of ruling with your heart too, rhubarb, connected to that Venusian energy. You will be able to find the way back to that place of your heart. It's just right now, it feels like to move into that place of vulnerability and to get that different perspective and that elevation of consciousness, and then look back at some of the moves you made or the things you said or the choices that you acted upon and the things that set in motion. It's like it can burn doing that review, but the burn is good. It's transformational. It's like the fire test of truth. It returns you to a place of integrity where you can truly take ownership, and you can move back into that position of holding your power wisely, speaking your words wisely, because you understand the weight your words hold, the things that they speak into existence, and how it cannot just shape events and transform relationships, but also can influence minds. Some of you are wanting to use your words in a new way. You don't want to talk about superficial BS. You want to go deeper. You want to feel the burn. You want the exposure. You're glad this exposure is happening. You're glad all the ugly stuff is coming up and out, because it's been a real burden for you to hold it for so long, and you could only hold it by yourself for so long. Like those who've been able to see all along, it's a heavy weight. It feels like, I'm glad that we're all feeling this burn together, because that's the only opportunity for transformation here, is if we all acknowledge this truth. That's what brings about the way through. We all got to move through the fire together. Ooh, this energy. It's interesting. Okay, so these kind of themes rolling out. Do look for oppositional positions to become more entrenched as we move through these next 72 hours. Do look for conflicts to sort of be even more pressurized. Do look for rash actions, because people are wanting to hold all the power. Do look for more of an effort to rush things. The pressure of feeling like you're operating with limited time, and the way that can be used to create a sense of instability, and how you can kind of take back that power by not allowing yourself to be rushed, where you feel the need to become more aware. Sometimes being pressured to rush can be an indication that somebody is not wanting you to have a moment to become aware of a factor that you need to have clarity around. So this might be something you want to use as a little bit of a signpost, that where you're feeling rushed, become more aware, pay attention. What's really going on here? Why the rush? Why the rush? Because right now everything's hanging in the balance anyway. It may feel like everything is speeding up, but at the same time, if you really think about it, because of the uncertainty of the future, time is in sort of a suspended animation state too. It's a very strange juncture we're at here. The digging ghost. Okay? So this is sort of like a repeat karmic pattern. We've been at a stage like this at multiple points in history, and we're kind of like digging up a lesson that we didn't get right multiple times, and we're being given an opportunity to sort of recover what was lost. But in order to recover what was lost and be able to retrieve a power that can open up a new door of opportunity for us through gaining a new perspective, through opening the doors of perception within our conscious awareness, we have to look at the ways that, we've really been drained of our power, our focus, our will, our energy. Because so many of us have developed a victim consciousness, like the walking wounded, and being so stuck on that point, like, I'm oppressed, or I've been held back, or I've been mistreated, I've been abused, and I get it. But that's keeping you in a position where you're not able to exercise your power. You still have the power of your own inner authority in your hands. And you might not be able to change what has happened to you in the past, but you can change your story here and now. But it requires you to truly own this power. You got to look at the places where there's holes in the story you tell yourself. There's lies within the story you tell yourself that keeps you from really owning the power that you do hold to affect change in your life and to be part of the change and what you have to contribute here. Okay, in whatever situation you're facing, yes, even though you don't know how it will turn out, even if you don't feel like there's anything to hope for in the future, even if all you see is doom and gloom and destruction up ahead because you don't have it all figured out. Sometimes we don't really discover the power we hold until we move it into action, until we actually start taking steps to affect change in our life, even when we don't know which way we're going. But just looking at what sphere of influence do we have and how can I use it in a productive way? Okay. If you just sort of sit there and feel helpless and you're taking in all this outside information and you're not doing anything with it and you're feeling sorry for yourself, that's when you're really putting yourself in that position of the hangman, the martyr, And ain't nobody got time for that anymore. Nobody got time for that. We're all feeling this. We're all feeling this. I mean, even the 1%, that holds all that power, they're also, freaking out right now and clamoring for control because they're feeling the pressure of sort of losing that control over the way the greater collective is sort of buying into that story anymore. So, they have a much different window in the grid. They're viewing our shared situation through. But they are starting to see that, what at one point, was like their trophy, their victory has become a bit tainted. It's pretty hard to protect this vision when all the seedy aspects of it and all of this corruption is being brought up and out, and it's sort of being just thrown out there on Front Street. It's like they're recognizing that, people are waking up. People are seeing through the illusion. They're not buying it anymore. They're not buying what they're selling. They're not so willing to follow them through that door of opportunity because they know that door of opportunity leads to something that isn't there to really serve them, but just to keep them in a place of complacency where they're able to be easily kept in line. Again, survival, putting somebody in a position of survival. How am I going to eat? How am I going to make it? How am I going to find a way through when I got all of these big players, facing off with me, when it seems like the very structure of our society is established in such a way that it stacks the odds up against me. Mm-hmm. It's actually not that hard to switch up the game, but it can't be done when there's sort of this divisory stance where nobody can find the meeting points. And it's one of those things where, is there going to be an instant solution for this? No, this is going to be messy for a while, man. It is. It's going to be messy for a while. We got a couple decades of this Pluto and Aquarius energy, and there's a lot of cleansing that needs to happen when it comes to tradition here. There's a lot that's being revealed here. There's a lot of bad blood before we ever spot signs of getting to the other side where we can reach land after a time of riding that wave of change. Okay? It's going to take time before we're able to cleanse this energy. And right now, we're all in this position of just taking that leap of faith into the great unknown. At first, we're all in it. We're all in it, in the thick of it, whether we choose to acknowledge that or not. So, I really just think that the best thing you can do at a time like this is whatever way you can be productive in your personal life. And it's okay. You don't have to look at it from like a rabble rouser stance. You don't have to look at it as, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to lead the charge and I'm going to change the world. No, I mean, sometimes it's just about taking steps to change your personal circumstances to get yourself in a position where you feel more fit for what's up ahead, where you feel like you're clearer, where you feel like you're more energized, where you can at least find some sense of purpose. So you're using your time wisely rather than a way that debilitates you, because it keeps you so locked in this place of anxiety about what's to come and feeling helpless, right? Nothing helps a sense of futility or helplessness more than taking some kind of productive action in your life. It shifts things. It does. And it's okay to start small, especially if you have been overwhelmed. It's okay. Start small. Start small. It can be as small as just getting up in the morning and maybe thinking of 3 things that you want to attend to that day, that you want to take care of that day, things that have been left undone, that you've been procrastinating on, that have been weighing heavily on your consciousness. And so it's just those extra tabs you have open in your brain. It's just creating more mental strain. The more you can start to sort of like chip away at that load of stress you have on your consciousness, the more you're going to free up your consciousness to focus on more productive things, things that allow an avenue of growth to come through, rather than all this congestion of so much worry and concern over what needs to be done that remains unfinished, you know? There's so much here just affirming, like, get out of the head and start to take some kind of actions, however small, to start to lessen that load of stress you're feeling. That's what's going to redefine things for you at this point. Okay, cut of the deck here to cap this off. Horse death, okay? We can't be loyal to the old structures of power. We can't be loyal to moving forward the same way we have in the past. These current power structures are in the process of dismantling. And it may not seem like that on the surface, not in all cases, but it's all shifting. There is a new way forward that's going to emerge out of this time of debilitation, where we're starting to see the collapse of the power structures and the systems that have been in place up to this point. And anytime you're experiencing that collapse, what's first going to happen is there's going to be this huge display of force and, you know, sort of like this big false display of power and assertion that's going to come forward. But it's coming undone. That there's just not enough spoons to nurture the old way. We know with Pluto in Aquarius that this wheel will turn. We also know that whenever we've had this kind of astrological configuration that we got going on right now, something evolutionary is happening. There is a golden era, you could say, that will come after we get through this rough stretch of the road. But it is a road that's before us for a ways to come. Okay? And this is not something that's going to transform overnight. And that's why there is this call to learn how to be more adaptable, to be able to flow with these changes and stay grounded, stay in calm center, even amidst so much upheaval and disruption. I think that's the problem. It's like people want to hit reset and they want to return to a time when everything felt really grounded, really stable, or at least certain. We were in a comfort zone. But now the only way we can get to the other side and get to something that can change the scope of possibility for our future is if we really get in the middle of what's terribly uncomfortable. But even within that, there's a way to find sustainable sources of renewable energy, okay, that don't come from sort of fixating on what's designed to keep us in that mindset that disempowers us. What do we got the other side here? Oh, we got to make up the goddamn mind here. We got to free our mind here. We need to get a totally new view. It's not this or that. It's not us or them. We really have to look for the connecting points. That is the way through. And it is what is going to give us that elevation of consciousness where it can give us an entirely new perspective. So in your personal life, where you've been sitting on the fence, where you haven't been able to make up your mind about what direction to head in, now is the time to simplify things and make a choice about what you're going to invest in right now. And not just sort of like half-ass, but be all the way in with your investment. Like, okay, You know, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I know that right now, this right here, this feels like the best choice for me as far as where I should be focusing my time, my energy, my intention, and then don't dissipate your energy. Invest everything you got in that direction. Pour your heart into that direction. Nurture that direction. Extract every bit of wisdom and growth you can from that direction. And then if new opportunities come your way that change that course of action down the road, then they do. But now's not the time to be in a place where you're like, I don't know, should I do this or that? Just choose a path. Choose a path. Choose a path of present purpose. Okay? Maybe it's not about looking at like 10 years down the road. You do need to be more in this moment right here, right now. So what is that present point of purpose that you can start to invest your heart and soul in? Start putting your focus in that direction. And then watch how that plays out. Watch the way it starts to shift things for you, not only within you, but in the way you're starting to see your outer reality acclimate to the inner evolution that's underway here, just by picking an investment with your focus, by aligning with what feels right from where you're presently at, and then see how much the way ahead transforms and the road that opens for you with the new moon that comes in on the 25th of June in Cancer on the other side of these squares. And I think that you'll figure out how to square a circle after all.